pretty excited to demo our favorite tips that you can use now with Android Studio 3.5 beta, and I've collected some of the best suggestions from across our whole team. This talk is all demo, so this is the last real slide you'll see. You'll see 39 minutes of code and IDE. I'll start with a short tip around one of my favorite features, the profiler tools. Justin will then show you some tips around core editing. Diego will take you through design tools, and then Ivan will end with building and deploying code. Now with that, let's get started. Okay, so what I have here is I have a really simple image filter app. You can do something like select a stock image. What it does is it'll pull up a stock image, and then I can choose some filters and go ahead and run that job. To start the profilers, you hit this button. When you hit this button, it builds the app, and then it starts a profiling session. I already have a profiling session running, so it's already kind of running. This is super small, and from the back, I'm sure you can't see anything. So my first tip is resize window. Command-Shift-Up arrow with Mac does this with any window. Down arrow drags it down. And now you can easily see our CPU, memory, network, and energy profiler. I'm going to go into the memory profiler. So this tool is a great way to detect memory leaks. You can kind of do the normal thing and grab a heap dump and then follow the GC route down. But I'm going to show you another tip that's an easier way to find if something's wrong with memory. So here I have my allocation tracking to full. What I'm going to do is try to see if any objects are hanging around after the GC runs. So let me go back to my app. I'm going to go back to the select image activity. You can see the activities up here. I'll select a stock image. That switches me to a filter image activity. And then I'm going to switch back, which kills that filter image activity. And then I can hit Command-G or force a GC event hitting this button. Now I'm going to pause. You can use another tip in profilers, which is Command- to zoom the view out or zoom it in. 0 gives me the default view, and I'm going to zoom out in a little bit here. I want to grab this entire activity here from filter activity to after the GC event runs, and then I'm going to filter to filter activity. Here I can now see the allocations and deallocations. So what I wanted to see was one allocation and one deallocation. So this might be indicative of something going on. The next thing I want to show you, sorry, I'm going to switch back. I'm going to change this back to none. The next thing I want to show you is our energy profiler. So working on mobile tools, you know that battery and Wi-Fi is pretty much like air and water, and it's really hard to see how much battery your app uses. So the energy profiler, if I go ahead and select a stock image here, it does a couple of things. So if I'm going to run these filters, it takes your CPU, network, and GPS sensor, and it visualizes the amount of energy your app is using. The other thing it does is in this demo, it's using the Work Manager, Jetpack's Work Manager library. So when I change those filters or ran them, they're being run as async tasks. Another little tip in the energy profiler is it also shows me system events. So if I go ahead and grab this, you can now see if you're using Work Manager, I can see all the jobs that are running as well. OK, with that, I'm going to give to Justin.
Thanks, Karen. That's fantastic. All right, now we're going to switch over, and I'm going to give you some tips about Core IDE. It's worth pointing out that Android Studio is powered by the IntelliJ platform, so a lot of the tips I'll be showing you today work across many of the JetBrains products. First, we're going to look into how to become a master of the environment, how to move around tool windows, editor windows, and find whatever you need. So I'll switch over to Android Studio now. At the heart of Android Studio is tool windows and editor tabs. You can open and close tool windows by clicking on the little buttons that are around the edges. But, of course, it's much easier to use the keyboard. If you look carefully, the ones down the bottom, you'll see this underlined number 9. If I press Alt-9, it opens that window. And Alt-1 will open project window for me. Press Alt-1 again to toggle it closed. So that's really handy. But if that was easy for you and you're already doing that, how about we wake you up with a super pro tip? What if you want to get to this gradle window for which there's no shortcut? I can use the switcher, Control-Tab, switches between most recent files. But if you hold the Control key and don't let go, you can now navigate with the arrow keys. Notice that every item on the left here has an underlined letter, and the Gradle window has a G. So I can just press G to open the Gradle window. Now, of course, you want to be able to close windows. Shift-Escape closes the window you're in, but it's also super useful if you're inside your editor, and you don't want to have to leave your focus to get that extra space. So without leaving the editor, just press Shift-Escape, and it closes the most recently opened window. It's great. You can easily get back to it with F12 anytime, and Escape puts you back in the document well. But now, a trick that I use all the time is to hide all windows. Just give me every space that I've got. Control-Shift-F12 hides all the windows. And it's neat because you can press it again to bring them all back. All right, let's see what else I've got to show you today. All right, while I've got some windows here, it's worth noting that whenever you're in a tree view and a tool window and many different places, you can just start typing, and immediately results get filtered, and you can navigate with the arrow keys. Particularly handy in the find results. If you need to filter through thousands of results, it'll instantly take you to what you need. But we're done with our tool windows for now. Let's take a look at our editor tabs. So these are our editor tabs up top here. And as I mentioned, Control-Tab switches between the most recent tabs. But what if you want to move to the one immediately to your right? This tab here, or this one here. For that, we use the Alt key. Alt-Right moves to the right, and Alt-Left moves to the left. If you happen to be in a layout editor, and you want to switch between the tabs at the bottom here, Alt-Shift-Right and Alt-Shift-Left help toggle through that. This also works if you happen to be in some of the tool windows, like version control. You can use the Alt key to tab between those. All right, so now that we've seen that, if you happen to be on a wide screen, like many developers are, it's sometimes very handy to have more code available. So here I can take a tab and I can say move right. Now I've split it into two different editors. And you can easily drag other editors over to join the other side. Now at this point, I would like to unsplit that row. I'm going to show you the find anything. Double shift opens a box that lets me type anything I want. If I type unsplit, I get an action, I can press enter, and all my windows are back together again. This double shift also lets me find files, classes, symbols, and actions. But pro developers tend to filter directly to files or classes or actions if they know that's what they want. And it's easy enough to remember the shortcuts. They all start with N on a Windows and Linux, versions of Control-N, Control-Shift-N. So you can easily find a file with Control-Shift-N, and it filters directly to files only. All right, so that's just getting in and around our environment. Now let's look at getting in and around code. So one thing worth noting is my favorite setting, which I always turn on every installation, is camel hump navigation. I'll show you the beauty of it. When we use the Control key, we can skip words with the left and right key. And when we use the Shift key, we can select text, put them together, and we can select entire words. But what do we do if we want to change this part in the middle here? It can be very painful to get there with many keystrokes, and I don't want to have to pick up my mouse. So now, opening up my Find Anything, I search for camel hump, and there's a setting here. Use camel hump words. And I can turn the setting on right here just by pressing enter. Now, with one keystroke, I can go straight to the next capital letter. And with another, I can select that middle part, easily replace it with a new name. Neat, huh? All right, now to get to the method below, you press Alt-Down. You repeatedly press Alt-Down to go to method below and press Alt-Up to go to the method above. This is especially useful if you're at the bottom of a method and you're trying to get to the top. Just press Alt-Up and it takes you straight to the method signature. But now, what if you find you're navigating around, you've been moving everywhere, and now you finally want to go back to where you were editing code last? At this point, we use go to last edit location. Control-Shift-Backspace takes me right there. All right, so let's look about some of the language features that make it a lot easier to code in your editor. We'll start off by talking about the method info and parameter info. I'm trying to fix a bug here. There's something wrong with the image dimensions. So I'm going to see, what does this method do? By pressing Control-Q, it opens up a little tooltip with all the Java doc. Now I can read the method signature, what it's returning, and any comments about it. You can even click to drill further to find out more about the objects in it. Now, if I happen to be inside the parameter set, I can press Control-P on a Windows box. And now I can tab and Shift-Tab between the parameters. Oh, hang on. I see what's going on here. It's looking for a width. but I've provided height. So now I'm going to use basic code completion. Control space opens up basic code completion, and cleverly, it's automatically put card width at the top of the list because it matches part of the parameter name. I like that. Now, to take that, there's two different ways of taking these things. You can either press Tab or press Enter. If I press Tab, it will replace the text that's there, which is what I usually want. But in this instance, I want to keep that so I can use it as my next parameter. So I'm going to press Enter, and now the text stays, and I can simply add a comma, and I've got another parameter that I can use. But let's look at smart code completion. I suppose most people here are familiar with code completion, but did you know how smart it was? If I need to fill out the parameters here, I don't even want to look at to see what I need. That's too much thinking. If I press Control Space, I get a long list of too many things available to me. But if I use smart type completion, I can press Control Shift Space and just get a filtered list of only those variables that will fit in that type. That means I don't have to think half as hard. And when I press Tab, it automatically completes it with a comma and moves me to the next field. So I make it a reflex. I always use smart type completion, and in this case, it's going to give me the one item I need. Even better still, it's so smart, if I do it from the beginning, if you look down, it's already suggested the two parameters that will complete this lot, and with one tab, it fills them all out for me. How's that? All right, now, the next section is going to be a little bit mad. So hold on to your seats, as I'm going to blind you through a whole lot of editing tips and tricks, including some advanced and some basic ones. I expect you're probably using a lot of these today, but see if you can pick which ones you're not using and maybe try to work out how they can be helpful to you. Don't worry about trying to learn all these things. If there's anything you need to find, you can always use Find Action, Control-Shift-A. And then you can look for what you need, and you'll find the shortcut that applies on your system. All right, let's get started. So, here's my task. I need to add lookup and query as extra parameters. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy that. Hang on, did I just copy two things? That's going to come in handy later. First, scroll the page with Control down. Down here, I want to join these lines, and Control-Shift-J brings them together. I can repeatedly press it to bring up the bottom line. Now, at this point, expand selection increases the selection through scope. It nicely stops at blank lines and then goes through to parameters. You can bring it back with Control-Shift-W so you get just what you need. Duplicate code. I can take this block and make a copy, many copies, and it doesn't muck with my copy-paste buffer. Comment that code with Control/ and comment it again with Control/. The neat thing is, if you're on a single line, you can press it, it moves down one. That's especially useful if you want to turn one lot off and turn one lot on. All right, let's look at moving lines. Take these two lines. You don't even need to select the whole line. You can move them up or down using Control-Shift up and down. At this point, if I'm going to move it into a block, it automatically formats it for me. But notice it won't go any higher than the scope. For that, there's a special shortcut. Alt-Shift up will push those lines wherever you need them to be. But I don't even want those lines, so I'm going to use Control-Y to delete them. Now, I want to get to this section here where it says search, but I don't want to use my mouse, so I'll use Control-F and just start typing. That's easy enough. Now, to grab this item and the one below it, I'll use multi-caret. I'll grab one, I'll grab another, hell, I'll grab several. Actually, I went too far. I'll use the Shift key to grab back a little bit. Now, I can paste the item I copied earlier. Keeping my two carets, I'll push them down again, use Expand Selection to select both, and now Control-Shift-V lets me copy and paste from my previous items. How's that? Now, let's see what else we can do. We'll have a look at extracting variables, methods, and parameters. I see a lot of this code is duplicated. So why don't I take this and make a method out of it, or a function in Kotlin? Control-Alt-Shift-T offers me an entire refactoring menu where I can do all sorts of things. It's worth noting that the shortcuts for extract variable, extract parameter, and extract method all start with the same Control-Alt and end with V for variable, P for parameter, M for method. I'm going to take this one now, give it a method name, and note that it creates the method for me and automatically calls it in that place. Sure, that's great, but what about all these other things? I want to do those to be in the method too. So I'm going to undo that. Now here's a pro tip. If you're going to be extracting methods and there's part of it that's similar, but just different a little bit, extract that into a variable, Control-Alt-V. I'll take both of these, I'll call it prefix. Now, if I try to extract this part with Control-Alt-M, I'll call it build path, the tool detects that there are already two other sections that are very similar and will replace them if I want. Yes, I'll take that, and yes, I'll take that, thank you. And now I can easily put this back, and I'm back to where I was. That was using the inline variable. So now I'm going to show you some more things. Before I show you extract parameter, I'm going to show you surrounds with. I want to stop this from having errors. So Control-Alt-T, and now I can now surround with anything I like. In this case, I'm going to type try, and I can surround it with a try-catch. Control-Shift-Enter does complete statement and puts my caret where I need to be. Now I'm going to use a live template, like log-D, which will print out a log statement. Or, like the classic Java system out, I can type sout to get a Kotlin print statement. At this point, I want this to be different in every caller. So I'm going to extract that as a parameter. Note that I'll give it a name, error, text, and now that text is going to be put in every method that was called before. Here you can see the text is appear above. Oops, wrong caret. Now, to get to the method, Control-B goes to definition, but if you're already at the definition, it'll go to the callers. Now I can change this text and say error 2 and error 3. Now let's look at some intentions. You can just tell the tool what you want and have it do it. Let's say I want this to start returning a Boolean. I'll get a red squiggly and a light bulb because it's not a Boolean function. But when I press Alt-Enter, it'll change the return type to Boolean for me. That's neat. So now I can come up here. If I want to wrap this in an if statement, I can use Control-Alt-T surround with again, which is handy if I want to get an else block as well. But check out postfix completion. If you have a Boolean, you can just type .if. And now, when I press Tab, it wraps that in an if statement. I like that. You can also use postfix completion for an iterator. Let's say I have a list already. If I type .for and press Tab, it gives me a variable that's nicely named as the singular version of my plural and puts me right back where I need. Now, this is kind of cool. At this point, I realize I could have just always used this one loop to get me around. So I'm going to fix this up with a smart code completion, put my URI prefix in here, and now delete line becomes my friend. Control-Y repeatedly to delete all that. Now, there's more intentions. If I hold my caret on anything and see a light bulb, I can see what it offers me. And there's all sorts of things, like invert if condition, which nicely flips and indents everything for me. And there's another one over here. It's offering me to replace a negated and negate the is empty. And flips that around. Of course, there's dozens of intentions. And I encourage you to go into the search and look for them yourself. We have provided lots of intentions specifically built for Kotlin. So you'll see all of those in here, including the ones that I just demonstrated now, and many other great ones, like merging if statements. So that's the end of my flyby demo. And so with that, I'd like to hand over to Diego, who'll take us through design tools. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. So in Under Studio, we have a number of design tools. Let me log in. There we go. So we have a number of design tools. Today I'm going to show you some tips around 3 of them. So first, we have the navigation editor, which will help you to edit your navigation graph. Then I'm going to show you how to use the layout editor and a few ideas around that. Last, I'm going to show you the newest design tool, which is the resource manager. So let's get started with the navigation editor. So let me open my navigation graph. So this is the navigation graph in my application. What this has is all the destinations in my app and how to go from one to the other. So as you can see, I have a title screen, which is the entry point. So what you see here is a very simple application, but you can already see how it's getting a little bit complicated. So you can zoom in and out as with any of the other tools that we have. So you can press plus and minus. You can navigate through the different destinations, clicking on the left side. So you can see how the different destinations look. But I wanted to show you that in this situation, so basically I have changed some things. You can manually move them around. But I want to get it in a state that helps me to, in a consistent state that basically I can start from. So if I click this button here, which says auto arrange, I click it, and it will get it nicely sorted. On the left side, I have my entry point, and then you have all the columns. You can still move them around and to put them in the better position, but this will give you a nice starting point. The second thing that I wanted to show you is how to create nested graphs. So nested graphs is a way to organize your navigation graph and to reuse some parts of it and to simplify this one that we are seeing here. So the way to do that is I just select the destinations that I want to put in the nested graph. So I'm going to select this one and this one. And then I simply right-click, move to nested graph, and click New Graph. I can also press Command-G. So as you can see, those two destinations have gone into a nested graph that I can easily reuse. So let me navigate to it. So I'll double-click in the nested graph. So you can see that this is much cleaner. So this way you can organize your application in different ways. So those were a couple of ways to organize your navigation graph a little bit better. Let me now go to the layout editor. So to do that from here, I just double-click in any destination. And here we go. This is the layout editor. What you're seeing here is a layout with a recycler view. So a recycler view is just one item that is repeated, and the data can come from any dynamic source. So it can come from the network. It can come from a database. When you are designing your app, you don't have access to that information. So what we did in the layout editor is you can get that information from using sample data. So it's a way to basically have some information that you can use to populate your layout. So let's see where this information is coming from. So if I click here and I open the attributes panel, let's see what item I'm using. So this is the item that I'm repeating in my recycler view. If I come and click, it will take me to that layout. If I select one of the items, let's see how this is populated. So the text for this, as you can see, it's not hard-coded. It doesn't come from from me typing every single item. So let's see what this is. So let me press Command again and click. So this is the JSON file that defines the information that I have in my recycler view. So it is just a regular JSON file. You can put anything that you want, and you can give it any format that you want. This will be available for you to use. So if I type this and I put Diego, now let's go, and that will update. Okay, so this is a very easy way to populate your layouts. So let me show you something else in the layout editor. Let's go to this user profile. So there are a couple of things that I want to do in this layout. One, I want to change the color of the username. I don't like it. I want something different. And I want to move the winner badge, which is the cap that you see in the bottom right. I want to put it next to the profile picture. So let's start with that. If I try to move this badge, if you see, it has two constraints. One to the parent on the right, and one to the top of the name. So first, in order to be able to move it freely, I need to remove them. So in 3.5, we have changed this a little bit to make it easier. So you can do it in two ways. One is press Command and then click. So that is one constraint gone. The other way is to select the constraint and press Remove. So that's the other one. Now I can freely move it around. So let me put it here. OK, so that doesn't look right. I cannot see the badge. The reason for that is with constraint layout, as with many other view groups, the order that we use to paint things is the order in the XML. So obviously, this picture here is below than the other picture that I showed you before. So let's fix that. You can do it in many ways. I can go to the XML and move the item. That's one way to do it. I want to show you a different way to do it today. So if I open the component tree, it shows the hierarchy of my layout. So as you can see here, this is the badge that I moved. This is the profile picture. So you can just simply drag, put it below. OK, so now I see it. So let me constrain it back. So I'll put this constraint back at the bottom. And that's it. Now the badge is next to it. You can do many things with the component tree. You can add constraints. You can remove constraints. The other thing that you can do is you can navigate to other layouts. So for example, I have an include here. If I double-click, it will take me to it. If I want to go back, I click back, and that's it. So let's go with the color of the name. So if we click the name, we see that the color is set to color accent. If we click the background, we also see that the color is set to color accent. So let's change we have a couple of ways to do this as well. So one is, let me click the Pick Resource button here, and that will take me to the resource picker. So in here, I can change the color to something else. Let me change it to something very obvious. And if I click OK, what this will do is it will change the color accent all through my application. So anywhere that I'm using color accent, this will be the color. So let's assume that I don't want to do that. I just want to change the color of this particular view. Well, in that case, I can click in this preview, and this will open the new color picker. So if I'm here, I select a different color. So now you can see that only this view actually changed color, nothing else. So yeah, that's pretty much everything that I wanted to show you around the layout editor. So let me now go to the resource manager. So the resource manager, let me actually open an empty layout. OK. So the resource manager is a new tool that we have, well, the newest tool that we have in the layout editor, and in the design tool, sorry. And it basically allows you to see every single resource that you have in your application. So you see drawables, you see colors, you see layout, and you see others. So I can quickly see the previews of all my drawables. I can click layout, and I can also see the preview of my layout. I can switch to a different mode if I want to see it. I want to see all the previews. And yeah, I can navigate through everything. So one thing that I can do is also, of course, yeah, if you click this filter button at the top and click show libraries, you can also see all the resources in your application, not only coming from your code, but coming from every library in your project. So in here, you can see that this is also coming from AppCompat and every other resource. So it's a very nice way to navigate through all of them very quickly. So let's do something with this. So if you basically click any of the images, so let me actually get this one and put it here. So that will create a new image view. This not only works with images, this also works with layout. So if I get a layout instead and then drag it and drop it, this will create an include into my surface. So again, it's very simple. It's a very convenient way to actually deal with these things. Not only works with the layout editor, so if you go to text and you are in XML, let me actually close this a little bit. So you can, let's get a different image. So this one, if you drag it into an empty space, that will create a new image. If I select a different one, this one, and I drag it on top of an existing image view, what this will do is it will change the existing image. So again, very simple, very quick. So yeah, so there was, oh yeah, I forgot about something else that I wanted to show you in the layout editor. Let me go back to the main graph. So yeah, this is the main graph. So let's go here. So yeah, there are a couple of cool things that I wanted to show you here. So I have this layout. I can switch orientation by pressing O. So you see how it looks in different like landscape and portrait. So this doesn't look great. You can see that the image is cropped. You can solve this in many different ways. One of them is you can go and change the scaling of your image view. But I want to show you a different way that you can do it using just constraint layout. So if I go to attributes and you see this constraint widget here, you can change many parameters of the constraints. But I want to draw your attention to this corner here. If you click it, it will set the aspect ratio. So now the aspect ratio of this constraint is 1:1. What this means, I can change it to something else, like 2:1 or anything that I want. By default is 1:1. So what this means is constraint layout will keep the aspect ratio of this image all the time, no matter the size of your layout or your screen. So with that, if I press O now, that looks much better. The other thing that I can do is if you drag this corner here in the layout editor, you can also see how it looks in any device or resolution. Very quickly, you can anything that you want. So yeah, so for now, I'm going to leave it in Pixel 2 here. So yeah, so that's it for me. That's everything that I wanted to show you around our design tools. So now Ivan is going to show you some cool tips and tricks around build, debug, and deploy.
Hi, everyone. Today, I'd like to share a few tips and tricks around building, running, and deploying your application. So I'm going to start with the basics, and that is how you organize your project. So let me close all of these tabs and bring up the project view. So I know many of you might not be comfortable editing Gradle files. I wasn't either. But let me explain you a few things. So basically, in settings of Gradle, if you open it up, you can see this app and core. And those are two projects that are actually included in our build. And by default, Gradle is going to look in the location in the directory app and in the directory core in order to find these projects, right? So Gradle is in general using convention over configuration paradigm, which means that it assumes reasonable default values for many of the options that you're able to configure. However, you might want to change this. Say I want to put the core under the libraries directory. So I can just pull it in here. And now I need to specify the new location of the project. I can do that by specifying the project directory here and passing the new location, which is libraries core. So you can see that the name is still core. So if I'd like to change that, I can do that by simply renaming it here. Let's call it core utils. And if I hit sync button here, Studio is going to pick up the new model, and it's going to show them on the left-hand side. So let's switch to the Android view here. And you can see that now we have core utils here. So there are other things you can configure as well. For instance, the build directory. So I opened up the core utils build.gradle file. And here, I'm not going to demo this right now, but I just want to show you that you can set the build directory value. So if you want to have a global place where all of your projects are creating artifacts, the build artifacts, you can do that here. For instance, you might have a faster disk or some common location, so it makes it easy for you to clean up. Cool. So next thing that I would like to mention is managing dependencies. So in projects that have multiple modules, it can be a bit difficult to actually update all of the dependencies if they are hard-coded, such as the case here on line 36. So this line, what it does, it adds the app compat dependency to the project. And when there's a new version of the app compat library, you basically need to find all of the occurrences of the hard-coded Maven coordinates and replace them with the new version. Why you want to do this is you typically want to have the same library version all across all of your projects, because otherwise you might run into some issues where you're compiling against one version and running against a different one, and they can run, you can cause some runtime issues that are pretty hard to debug. All right, let me show you how you can do this. So I'm going to go back to the project view here, and I created library versions.gradle file. So here I want to specify the Maven coordinates. So I have Android X, and then I'm just going to create an empty map. This is Groovy. You can write any Groovy here in this file. So let's write androidx.appcompat equals, and then I'm just going to go back to this file, copy this value, and drop it here. Now, I would like to access this value as libs.androidx.appcompat in my build files. So for that, I'm using this extension object that exists. And extension object is a Gradle provided artifact, and you can add additional properties here. So I can create a property libs, and initially I'm going to set it to be an empty map. And right now, I can actually set the value for AndroidX, oops, sorry, typo, for on the value of the map that I have just created above on line 6, right? So now, how I'm going to use this in my project is I'm going to open up the build.gradle file in the root project. And if I uncomment this line and sync, what this does, it runs the script that I have just created, so library versions.gradle, against the current build script. So it adds all the properties that I have created to the extension object. So if I switch back to the core utils project, I can actually access those properties with libs.androidx.appcompat. And it's not only in core utils project that I can access them. I can also access them in the app project. So let's open up app build.gradle. And here, I have conveniently left another occurrence of this library. So we can add it here as well. Access it as appcompat. If I hit sync now, it should pick it up. Hopefully I made no typos. Let's see. It works. Cool. Now, when there's a new version of appcompat, you can just change the one in library versions.gradle, and you don't have to go throughout your projects and hunt down all the occurrences of that library. Now, sorry. Here you can see that we have just added a single line in order to add the dependency of the project, but Gradle is going to download all of the libraries that this library transitively depends on. So it's not only appcompat that we're going to have in our application, we're going to have all of the runtime dependencies of appcompat. So you might want to actually explore what are those libraries in order to understand why is something part of your final APK. For that, we have built project structure dialog. So if you go File and Project Structure, and here on the left-hand side, you select dependencies. And I'm going to select the core utils module. So here in the core utils module, you can see that their appcompat is specified, and that's the explicitly specified library in your build.gradle file. However, if you click Resolve Dependencies on the right-hand side, you can actually see all of the variants of this library. And on top of that, you can actually explore the dependency tree. So for appcompat, we can see that it depends on the fragment library. And further on, fragment depends on the loader, and so on. So here, you can get a pretty good view of all of the libraries that you actually depend on. So let's close this. Next thing that I wanted to mention is the build speed. So I know it's a pretty endless topic where we are constantly trying to make you more productive, and we're putting a lot of effort into that. However, there are some things that you can do yourself, and that is to make sure that your build is set up correctly. So one of the things that I like to do is to run the build once, and then make no changes, and then run the build second time. And what I would like to see is that the second time build is fully up to date. So if you change nothing, the final output should be the same. No task should actually run. So let's try that with this project. So I select the core utils here. I select build and make module, which is basically building the whole project. If you pull up the build window here, at the bottom, you can see that there were 21 tasks, 19 of which were executed, and 2 were up to date. And that's fine. Now, if I hit build again, I expected to see all of them up to date. However, you can see that 5 of them were executed. So if you are able to try this out on your projects and you see that something is wrong, like, you can debug it further. Let me show you how. So here are all the tasks that were executed. And so you can see that some of them were up to date, and that is expected. However, there is this task, generate debug build config, that actually ran. There was something that changed that caused this task to run. So this could be due to your build or gradle file, or it could be due to some plugin that you're applying in your project. So let's quickly skim through this file. And here you can see that I'm trying to add information when an application was built. For instance, you might use that in the about page or something else. And I'm setting the build time field of the build config as new date. Well, this new date here, that is going to change whenever we run. So because whenever there's a new run, we are going to pick up the new value. So this task will have to rerun. So let me fix that by setting it to a constant. And now, if we select the core utils module, and if we build, the first time it is expected that there were 4 executed tasks because we have actually changed the value. However, if I run for the second time, you can actually see that all of the tasks were up to date. And this is exactly what you should be seeing in your own builds. That was the bit about Gradle. Now I would like to also show you the new deployment flow that we have developed in Android Studio 3.5, and that is applied changes. So previously, Instant Run was our attempt to try to make the incremental builds faster and to provide hot swap for Android. Applied changes is fundamentally different than Instant Run. It relies on the support in the platform, on the device itself, in order to provide incremental updates to the APK. So let me run this on the emulator. I'm just going to minimize this in order for you to see the emulator. So right now we are building the APK. Here you can see that there are 3 buttons. So we have the run button that is building the full APK, and it restarts the application. There is this button, which applies Android resource changes, and it restarts your activity, so you're able to see those resource changes on the screen. And there's the third button, which applies code changes. So if you change the method body, for instance, you can hit this button, and new version of code is going to be deployed to the device. So here, let's go to the leaderboards page, screen. So here we can see players, we can see their score, and we can see their rank. So let me show you how you can change a resource really quickly. So let's open up strings.xml and say I would like to rename the application. So this is really obvious. And if I hit this button, what happens is that the APK on the device, we get all the information necessary from it. We know its structure. We build the APK on the host, so we invoke the full build. Then we create a diff between those 2 APKs, and only the diff is actually deployed to the device. So the runtime is able to pick it up. So here you can see that we picked up the new name, so it's quiz sample, without actually restarting the application. And what it allows you is not to lose the context. So if you're somewhere deep down in the application, then we make your life easier. Another thing that I would like to show you is the code change. So let's quickly open up the user profile page. So this is a screen that shows the user profile. And I have conveniently created a bug here in order to demonstrate you something. Let's put a breakpoint here. So now, if I open a profile here, I have hit this breakpoint here, and you can see that the user rank is 2, although I have clicked on the second user. So this is a screen that's supposed to paint the next user, and it's supposed to pick up the value from this bundle. So let me change this here quickly to get an integer, because I know how to fix this. I wish every bug was like this. And let me redeploy the code. So now what we're doing, we're redeploying the new version of the application to the device. Now here's the interesting bit. You see this in the bottom, you can see this exclamation mark that actually says that the current code is obsolete, right? So what this means is that the current version that we are running in has been overridden with a new definition of the method. So I can click this button here, which says drop frame. What it does, it puts me back in the context of the method that invoked the onCreateView method, right? So now if I continue here, what it did, it re-executed this new method, and it picked up the new version of the code, and you can see that the user rank is correctly now set to 2. It's not 1 anymore. So now if I click continue, we can see that the rank 2 is loaded. Thank you. So I hope you will find this useful, and I hope you'll be able to leverage this apply changes deployment flow in order to make your debugging easier. As you can see, it's very useful when you're somewhere deep in the application and you're just fixing bug as you go. With that, I would like to wrap it up for today and bring everybody back to the stage.
Thank you.